podcast. Tonight's show is brought to you by Capital Grill, Chickies and Pete's, and Payroll Service Solutions. We now go live to Chickies and Pete's for Snow the Goalie. Now, here are your hosts, Anthony SanFilippo, Russ Joy, and former Flyer Chris Therien.
Oh, welcome into Snow the Goalie Radio here on WBCB. We are streaming live on the WBCB YouTube channel as well as on the Snow the Goalie YouTube, Facebook, and X. And we are here for another wild, wonderful week of Flyers hockey.
Yes, we're at the Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard in Northeast Philadelphia. So hopefully if you're on your way, you'll be able to come in and say hello. Unfortunately, Bundy is not with us tonight.
He is not.
He had a personal matter that came up today. Everything's fine. Nobody's ill or injured or anything like that. But he had a personal matter come up, but he'll be back with us next week when we reconvene on a Tuesday next week, Russ, because of Thanksgiving being next week and Wednesday being one of the busiest travel days of the year. We're going to move it to Tuesday next week, and we'll be at Parks Casino.
I love that.
Next week. So for those of you who aren't able to come out and join us tonight, come next week to Parks, Chickies and Pete's Parks next week.
I got some friends over there.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Be fun.
It'll be a good time. You gonna play a couple of hands of blackjack?
Yeah, maybe.
What's your vice?
If I play, I'd be playing
guy?
black.
You should be a
No,
craps guy.
no, I could play. If I'm going to gamble, which I don't do a lot, I'm going to gamble on things that I have some semblance of control.
Okay.
So it's blackjack and poker.
Okay.
That's it. Everything else, I don't feel like there's any semblance of control. And so I won't play it.
The only gambling you really do is your weekly or nightly selections of Flyers games over in the predictions thread.
But I'm not gambling money. I'm just
No,
offering.
Just your reputation.
I'm just offering
Just
free,
your reputation.
which, by the way, I'm doing pretty darn well.
I think you're doing okay.
Yeah, I'm doing
I
pretty
should
darn
have
well.
an update on the Press Row show on Thursday night when we're down there for Flyers Blues, and then we're back there on Saturday again for Flyers Devils. But
saw the Blues practicing at the Flyers training center today.
Did you?
Yeah, they got into town early, and they had ice over there before I left this afternoon.
Okay.
And they were skating a little bit over there. So both teams were in the training center today. Flyers first, and then the Blues for about an hour in the afternoon.
Now I want to give people a little, I guess, an appetizer since we're here at Chickies and Pete's. Now I would typically recommend that you go get the mussels, or maybe you go get some of the Bundy shrimp, or maybe you get some crab fries ahead of time. But we will have a special guest joining us at 6:30.
That's right.
Should we
in
tease
person?
that? Should we tease that?
No, I'll just say it. I'm just going to say it.
The people who are listening on radio, they don't see what we all see over on the stream. They don't get to take a goosey gander at the description of the episode. So it's a surprise to the radio people, not as much to the YouTube, Facebook, and X
Wouldn't you
viewers.
want them to stay tuned in?
I think that's a great point. Go ahead. Why
Yes.
no.
Joining us at 6:30 is NHL insider Frank Seravalli.
Wow.
Frankie will be here in the building. He'll be here at Chickies and Pete's about 6:30, and he'll give us his national perspective.
I love a little
national perspective of the Philadelphia Flyers, especially as a guy. I mean, he talks to everybody around the league, every GM, every agent, every scout. Like, he is Mr. National Insider, and he'll give us a real take of how the Flyers are being viewed from afar.
I guess we'll see who he aligns the most with between you and me, and we have a general idea of where Bundy stands on this team. I guess we probably should have a conversation about the fact that the Flyers really haven't played a lot of hockey since the last time we spoke to the people, or at least since we spoke to the masses on the radio here.
Well, there were three games.
They had a one of it's going to lead to I think a larger conversation. Of course, one was a 6-5 shootout. Sam Ersson in net, his third win of the year. All three of his wins have come in the shootout. We'll talk about that a little bit later on as well.
It's been the only thing he does well.
Well, we'll get there. We will certainly get there. And then they had a loss. Dan Vladar in net, an uncharacteristically off night for him, although I wouldn't say that they were – it certainly was not all on Darth Vladar, but that game against Dallas, I think only the second time this year he's allowed 4 more goals.
Yeah,
so
and we'll get into that a little bit.
Some grace to young Dan Vladar.
And we'll get into that too, because Rick Tocchet was not happy with the way the team played against Dallas. And yes, it was a third game in 4 nights with travel between cities. So if you looked at the schedule at the beginning of the season and you went, oh man, that's a scheduled loss right there.
Yeah.
Fine, but it was more upset with their compete level in the game.
It was bad.
Yeah, and so that led to a couple of really hard practices this week, Russ, which we'll talk about a little bit as well. So yeah, I mean, you can talk about the goaltending a lot, but right now the issues with this team are not. Dan Vladar's fine. Sam Ersson maybe not, but there's some issues up. The way that the team's playing in front of them, and the way Tocchet's been going into it and talking about it the last few days. And I love talking to him over at training center. He's so honest about it. Like
talking to Tuck.
Yeah. So you know what he said? He
said,
talks
the Tuck. And
I asked him about, why are you having these hard and believe me, the practice on Monday, they beat the snot out of each other on the ice. Good. In that practice. They hit each other like you wouldn't believe. There was one, and I think it was I think Jordan from NBC Sports had video of it. There's an exchange that started with Mishkov and Yinning, and Mishkov slashes Yinning.
Yep.
And Yinning kind of pushes back, and then Noah Juleson goes over and starts shoving Mishkov, and Mishkov shoving him back, like in front of the net, like they're battling. Like it was NHL game in practice is what it was. So they did that. He then gave him a day off because it's very physical practice. And then today they were right back at it again with a long practice, 3 different sessions on the 2 sheets of ice, a lot of ramped up stuff. And you asked Talk, I asked him, like, well, what goes into this? He's like, we're backing into the zone too much. We're not competing enough. Like, and he wants more of that, right? So he said today, and this was the best thing today. He said, I'm not predicting anything. He said, but I would be really surprised if we're not ready to play Thursday night against St. Louis after these two practices.
Well, I mean, I guess the good news there is that, we often talk about the fact that during the course of a season, it is really hard to get meaningful practice time in. And here you have the opportunity, I guess, to have that appropriate practice time where you can fully get into the system itself. Like how many times, you go back to under Torts, there were times under Scott Gordon when he was the interim coach, even last year with Brad Shaw, that they would just talk about the fact that like later on in the season, it really is kind of at that point kind of running on autopilot. You don't have a lot of time to break down the system itself. So if they get that time in now, you kind of set that standard, right? That's their big thing, or brick by brick. Now is the time to kind of build that foundation, and then obviously hope that over the course of the season you can continue to build off of that very strong foundation.
And I think it's important to note, Russ, that they don't get many of these breaks. Like
no.
They looked at this as a very important 4 days, because when you look at the rest of the season, again, because of the Olympics, the schedule being condensed, they do have a 3-day break in early December, right? Other than that, they don't really have another break other than the Olympic break when everybody is off and nobody's practicing, right? So as a team, this is it. You get, like I said, you get one more 3-day break at the beginning of December and then nothing the rest of the year. You're pretty much playing every other day, or maybe to get 2 days, right? Kind of thing, right? But that's it. And so they really looked at this and said, we have to really make a change here and have a little bit of a reset in these 4 days. And they want to come out of this. You got 2 home games Thursday, Saturday, and then you got to play 4 and 6 next week, all 4 on the road, right? So you're going Tampa and Florida and the Islanders and the Devils, right? It's not an easy run of those 4 games, especially the way the Islanders have been playing like a really good team right now. So you look at what's ahead and say, this is a make or break stretch, these 4 days off, and they got to get it right.
Yep. I've been told that we have a caller.
Great.
Calling in.
You didn't even give out the number.
I didn't even give out the number, but this is how we know that the stuff on YouTube works pretty well, is that we put the number out online, 215-949-3232. Again, that's 215-949-3232. I've been told Lauren is on the phone. Lauren, how are you doing?
Hey, guys. Well, it's an honor to talk to you. I'm here with my wife in Florida, and we were just wondering what you thought of the brutal face-off performance of the Flyers centers, because it's been pretty painful to watch here from the Sunshine State. I know, the matchups are, I guess, kind of a big part of it, but, I know it's not something you perfect in a day, but when you're used to seeing Coots and even, Giroux, it's kind of painful losing all these possessions. Aside from we know the situation with Zegers, but.
Yeah, and you know what, Lauren, I would say to you that normally, I mean, faceoffs are important. Normally, though, in a regular game, even if you're losing the faceoffs, it doesn't necessarily mean you're losing the possession battle. But for this Flyers team, it's all the more important because they don't seem to get the puck back after they lose the faceoffs. So that makes them so much more important for this group. And you're right. Other than Couturier, who's really the only center that's really good at faceoffs on this team, they're struggling. Even Noah Cates, who was better last year, has not been as good this year. I think there was a little bit of disjointedness with that line with the Forster injury and things. People got moved around. Not that should affect your faceoffs, but I think that it impacted the way that group was playing. Zegers cannot take faceoffs. We've learned that. That's why he's technically better as a winger than as a center. You're not getting anything out of your fourth line. Dvorak is okay as a faceoff guy, but not great. That's why it's important for this team to start playing with a little bit more pace and a little bit more being aggressive towards the puck and towards the puck carrier if it's on the other team. I think that matters more. And once that stuff starts to work, then the faceoffs maybe don't seem as important. But until it does, then yes, the faceoffs are incredibly important, and it's not good that they're not getting good faceoff production.
Yeah. Do you think that's something that obviously Tochet's aware? I mean, the coaching staff, is that something you just sit all the centers down for hours in practice and situational awareness, how to take each draw when? Is it a matter of Coots doing some tutoring? Like, is it something you think will improve?
So that's a great question. Thanks for the call, Lauren. We watch them practice it. I mean, it's not an everyday thing. They're not sitting there every day working on faceoffs, but I'd say that they do it pretty regularly, Russ. And it's not a focus of practice, because usually the focus of practice is something systematic. But after they get through all the systems, and then you probably towards the end of practice, when you have that last 10 or 15 minutes before everybody leaves the ice, you always see guys going into face-off dots and working together, and it's usually an assistant coach who's over there working with them. And Couturier is very, very active in this and very vocal about it as well, and trying to show the guys the best way to do it. So, yes, they do focus on it. They do talk about it. They don't overdo it, I would say, but they do make it a focal point at some point during their practice. Make sense?
We'll see, yeah, I mean, we'll see if the big guy that ultimately needs to learn how to take a face-off, if he's going to reach his maximum potential here with the Flyers, is Trevor Zegras. And in an ideal situation, it would happen sooner than later. Because at this point, it was interesting. I was looking at the lines from practice today. I don't know. I mean, you were down there today, correct?
Yes, I was there today.
So I was looking at, I think Jordan Hall was the one who actually put out the line combos earlier today. But, they had Zegras on the wing again. I guess this is just becoming part and parcel at this point. It's becoming the expectation that he's going to be there. But, this is, I think, a bigger point for us to have a conversation about. Tocchet is jostling the lineups again. Just listen, Torts did it last year, and we decried the fact that, or bemoaned the fact that he was so often blowing up lines that it becomes really difficult to build meaningful chemistry with your teammates and with your line mates. Now, this season so far, the most successful line, and this is pre his injury, but Tyson Forster's line with Cates and Brink was by far the best, most productive line on the team.
Yep.
They were definitely the best third line in all of hockey. And in a lot of ways, they were being played as the Flyers' top line. Now, ideally, if you are trying to be a playoff team, that probably is not a good sign if they're the best and most productive unit on your team, especially given the fact that there are higher paid players on the team that are expected to be meaningful and, meaningful players that can make game-changing plays. But it seems as though since Forster's injury, they've been required to kind of change these lines up a bit, try to find something that will work. So these are the lines from practice today. Make of it what you will. Forster, Cates, Konechny, Mishkov, Couturier, Brink, Zegras, Dvorak, Tippett, Grabenkin, Abels, and Hathaway. Now you look at that and you go, all right, Forster and Cates makes sense. You're swapping Brink for Konechny. That might be a good way to try to get Konechny going, at least from a hopeful goal-scoring perspective, maybe. Mishkov and Couturier have played together. They played together well. That's okay. Bobby Brink doesn't throw off the chemistry of that line, I wouldn't say. I think that actually can mesh pretty well. So those top two, I'm okay. Zegras, Dvorak, Tippett is interesting.
Well, they played really well together this past week.
Yeah.
I mean, they had that one game, the game against St. Louis, where they had, 10 points combined. Dvorak scored the lone goal against Dallas on Saturday. He put them together. I guess it was, they've been together off and on for the season, but they really were.
Zegras and Dvorak, you mean?
Yeah. And they were together against Edmonton for part of that game as well, too. Yeah. They weren't as productive in that game. But yeah, I mean, they played well the last couple of games, and so he wants to keep them together. Look, I know that there's been a lot of talk online about you got to get Tyson Forster off that line because they feel like he's got a goal scoring potential and he needs to be with more creative players, and that that line should be broken up. Look, the reality of it is that line was really good until Forster had the foot injury when he took the shot, right?
Yep.
And then he missed a handful of games. And then he came back. But he comes back, keep this in mind, he comes back with 1.5 practice. It's like a skate and one practice, and then he goes into a 3 and 4, right? That's tough, man. That's tough to come. So, like, you sit there and say, okay, Tyson Forster did not have a great 3 games coming off of the foot injury. I have a feeling he's going to be a lot better now. We had 4 more days, getting away from that, and a little bit of time off, time to rest it. I think you're going to see a much better version of Tyson Forster. Now, why did he break up the line and take Brink off the line? I think, again, like you said, it's kind of trying to jumpstart Konechny a little bit.
Yep.
Wasn't really working with Coots and Mishkov. He was getting points, but was mostly secondary assists. He wasn't really scoring. Putting him there on that line, with 2 responsible forwards allows him a little bit more creativity, freedom to be a little creative in the offensive end. So I think you'll see a little bit more out of that. And I think Bobby Brink was a guy who suffered a little bit by Forster not playing well.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's the only switch that they made. So it's not like this big jumble up everything, nor do I think that this is something that's permanent. I think it's just something that's trying to get a couple guys going.
Yep.
And then I'll tell you right now, you will see Cates, Forster, Brink together again at some point.
I would fully expect it. I mean, over the course of an 82-game season, coaches get away from things that worked and they maybe stagnated a bit, and they come back to it. Yeah, especially like later in the season. A very good chance that the Forster, Cates, Brink line, if they're in the midst of a scoring slump and those guys are playing on opposite lines, different lines, very high chance that as things start to get more interesting into March and April, a very good chance that Tocchet goes back to something that worked like a well-oiled machine. Now, there's an interesting question that came in over on YouTube from Greg Bondarenko, and I think it's worth probably a chat here because we're talking about guys that, theoretically could take that next step, and some guys that have actually played for their country before in different tournaments and in different settings, different age groups. But Greg's question over on YouTube, do we have any potential Olympic players? I know that break would be good for players, especially nursing injuries.
Yeah, you'll have a few. I'm pretty certain Sanheim will still be with Team Canada. He might be the depth guy. He might be their number 7D, but I think he'll be there.
And he's played well. And
yeah.
That seems deserved if it goes that way. Like if he were to make the team right now, you'd say he's playing like a legitimate top pair defenseman.
Yeah, I think that he's probably still there. I don't think Konechny is back.
No.
With them, even though he was on 4 Nations, Team Canada.
Yep.
I don't think he's back there. I think that Rodrigo Abels will be playing for Latvia. There's no question about that.
Go. Rodrigo, good luck.
He will play for Latvia. I do wonder if Zegras is getting himself into the conversation for Team USA, and not because I think that he's a guy that would be an integral part of Team USA, but if you're Team USA, think about it. Those Olympic games often end in shootouts.
Yep.
Right?
TJ Oshie.
Wouldn't you? And in international play, you can go as many times.
Didn't they change that rule? Am I crazy? I thought they changed it. I don't know. But anyway, that remember.
They have.
How many times did Oshie go in that shootout?
We can ask Frank when he gets here.
Yeah. How many times did Oshie go though? It was
a lot.
Was it 5? Was it more? Like I feel like he just went nonstop.
He did go nonstop. Anyway, point being that you could do a lot worse than Trevor Zegras on your 4th line, and oh, by the way, you happen to have that guy for the shootout if it gets there.
Yeah.
So I think that he could come into the conversation.
TJ Oshie went 4 for 6.
4 for 6.
Which percentage-wise is roughly 66.7%.
Which is
very close to where Trevor Zegras is.
What Trevor Zegras
So if
is
you
at.
needed your designated this generation's TJ Oshie, why would it not be Trevor Zegras?
Yeah. I don't think Ersson's going to be back in net for Sweden, although I guess it's possible he's like their third goalie.
He played really well for Sweden in the Four Nations, and then he came back here, and it was, disaster.
Yeah, I mean,
like bad news bears.
I don't think so. Yeah, but that's pretty much it. I mean, I can't think of anybody else that would. I don't know.
Nobody else really comes to mind. Now, if Russia were in contention, you would think Mishkov would not make the Russian team right now as currently constituted. However,
no,
if he starts to go on a scoring bender, then maybe it's a different conversation. They're not even they're not doing the non-Russia affiliated thing, right? Remember there was the year with the Olympics that they had it was like Russians were allowed to compete, but they couldn't do it under the Russian flag. Do you remember that?
Yes.
It was like 2-3 Olympics ago. They're not doing that though, to my knowledge. So if there's a last second change comes around and Mishkov all of a sudden becomes, the ultimate sniper, then like maybe
I guess you could potentially say Vladar for Czech Republic.
I think that's it. There's probably a fair case to make.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
If he plays like a number one goalie from now until the time the Olympics roll around, you'd at least have to have that consideration. It's kind of funny. I was talking about this earlier today on my show, but, Vladar has spent so much of the season in like the top 5 for goals against and save percentage. And you look at it and you go, he's only had 2 games this year where things have kind of gone sideways on him, right? I mean, most recently against Dallas. And then there was another time, was that the Toronto game? He got pulled early in the third period on a weekend. I think it was against Toronto. I think those are the only two games that he's given up 4 or more goals, right? He still, despite the fact that he gave up, 5 against Dallas, he's still 8th in the league overall with a 2.42 goals against average. His save percentage is still above 900, which, I mean, listen, if you listen to us in the offseason, all last season, you know the importance of a 900, save percentage, preferably higher. He's at a 909 save percentage, 12th in the league. Like, he so far, through 11 games, which is roughly a third of the total games he played last year, which is kind of crazy, he is still holding up to the pressure of being this number one that no one thought he would be going into the season.
No, he is. He is. And there is one more name and good on Tim Tobin for remembering this, because I forget sometimes.
Ristolainen?
Rasmus Ristolainen for Finland, if he's healthy.
He's not going to be healthy.
He's skating now. I think he could be playing within the next 10 days or so.
Cool.
So he would be healthy by February.
Yeah, sure. Rasmus Ristolainen being healthy later in the season. Yeah. I believe in that. Tell you what, if you believe that, I got a plot of land to sell you in the midst of a swamp somewhere.
By the way, we should probably do this now because Frank will be here in a few minutes. So might as well get this conversation out of the way.
It's a good conversation.
It's a good conversation.
It's not get the conversation out of the way. It's let's bring in this conversation.
Well, yeah, it's
let's bring it back to the middle here. We gotta focus in.
It's better for us to talk about it than to wait for when Frank gets here, because
the national perspective.
Yeah, it's a national perspective, right? All right. So it is time now for the Payroll Service Solutions Player of the Week.
Love that.
Brought to you by Payroll Service Solutions. Call them today, 1-866-PAY-EASY. That's 1-866-PAY-EASY. Russ, this is a tough one, I think, this week, although I know who I'm going to pick. Do you want to go first? I want you to go first. I'm going to pick Christian Dvorak.
Are you?
Yeah, I think that he's for the first part of the season, I was kind of wondering, like, Jesus, where does this guy ultimately really fit in here on this 1-year deal, $5.2 million? Like, was that a big time overpay? Like, I wasn't seeing a lot of production out of him. He's responsible. So it's not like he's been bad on the ice, but it was kind of like, what is this guy? And then all of a sudden, playing with Zegras and Tippett this week, he's looked great.
Yeah,
he's looked really, really good. Had a couple of goals against the Blues, had the goal against Dallas. He's just looking better. That line is looking good, and maybe Zegras just makes them all play better, right? And I know Owen Tippett had a 4-point night against the Blues, but to me, I think Zegras, Dvorak is the guy that has impressed me the most out of the three of them this week. So he's my guy for Flyers Player of the Week.
I'm going to surprise you. My player of the week. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
I don't think you're going to believe it.
Okay.
I mean, I've surprised you in the past.
You have.
I think I might actually break you this time.
Yeah.
My player of the week is none other than Owen Tippett.
Get out.
And I'm going to tell you why Owen Tippett is my player of the week.
Okay.
Because on Friday, I went over to the Russ Joy show, available on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. I went on the show, and I absolutely laid into Owen Tippett for his boneheaded plays, his inconsistent play. The fact that he looked generally lost, dazed, and confused on the ice at any given time, which are things that I've said on this show a bunch of times. But Friday, it was very definitive. Video guy Amadeo went, he clipped up all kinds of stuff. He put it all over YouTube and TikTok and everything, right? And that night, Owen Tippett went out. And how many points did he have, Anthony?
4.
And then the following game, he went out and he got himself another point. So he had 5 points in his last 2 games.
Yeah.
And because he very clearly listened to my show and heard the whispers and heard the snarls, he went out there and he performed very well, 5 points in the last 2 games. And I, if nothing else, am fair and objective. And so I will give the player of the week this week to Owen Tippett.
So since we don't have a tiebreaker this week, we have to have them co-players of the week.
No. No, we don't.
Okay. You have a solution for how we're going to resolve this?
Well, so go back over it. Dvorak this past week played on a line with who?
Zegers and Tippett.
Okay. So you picked Tippett.
No,
I picked Tippett. You picked
Dvorak.
So the tiebreaker is we go with their line mate. Congratulations, Trevor Zegers. You are the player of the week.
Well, there you go. That was your Flyers player of the week. Once again, brought to you by Payroll Service Solutions. Call them today, 1-866-PAY-EASY for the smart choice in payroll services. Payroll Service Solutions caters to the small and medium-sized business to handle all of your payroll needs. Call them once again at 1-866-PAY-EASY.
I'm actually being told that we have a caller.
Yes, let's go to the call.
That Tony is on the phone.
Tony.
And so I think now is probably a good time to go out to Tony. Tony, how are you doing? Thanks for calling in to Snow the Goalie Radio.
Guys, I love your show. I love the spirit of what you do. I love how hard you guys work. And I'm here in Knoxville, Tennessee, so I'm like a hockey starved, but I grew up watching the Flyers in the 70s, the early 80s, and all those great memories. Question for you guys in trying to put in context what I'm seeing on a nightly basis from this team. With that schedule condensed the way that it is, rather than being laid out like a normal schedule would be the last couple of years, it seems like the teams that are, at a talent deficit, like the Flyers are a little bit, it seems like those teams get ground down. Do you guys think that's true? Is it a disadvantage to be where the Flyers are, say, in their rebuilding process? And is it hard to gauge that versus what a normal regular season would look like? And I'm particularly look at the last couple of years as I ask that question and just wonder exactly what am I looking at versus, say, a normal regular season?
Tony, it's a great question. And I think that more than anything with this schedule, the detriment for the Flyers is how front-loaded their home schedule was.
Yeah.
They are playing so many home games in the beginning of the season. They've already played 11, and they have a 6-game homestand coming up in 2 weeks. Like, you're pretty much halfway done your home schedule before Christmas. That's nuts. That means the majority of the second half, when the schedule is basically playing every other day, is going to be them traveling. And I think that that's going to hurt them and grind them down because of their talent deficit, as you called it, a little bit more than the fact that the schedule's condensed. Every team's facing the condensed schedule, right? And so far, we look at the start of the season, and there are teams that, are disappointing to start the season, and they got to face that same grind. And then there's teams that are a little bit of a surprise to start the season, and they got to face that same grind. Will those surprise teams drop off, and will those teams that are playoff tested, who have gotten off to a slow start, will they rise because they're used to playing that in like a playoff format, playing at a higher level? We will see. I just think that the Flyers need to in the next couple of weeks, bank as many points as they can to give themselves a little bit of a grace period or a little bit of a soft landing when they have a bad run. Because you know what? At some point during that second half of the season after Christmas, but starts actually right before Christmas, they're going to have a 4-game losing streak where they don't get anything, or maybe they get 1 point in 5 games or something like that. Like, that's going to happen.
That's when the fan base lights themselves on fire.
Yeah. And I think they need to have a cushion there in order to prevent it from really, really hurting them.
I don't know if Tony's still
The
there.
answer,
There he is.
because as we watch this stuff, it's so hard to put it in context. Because really what they've done is the last couple of years, and it worked out well last year, it's mid-season. I mean, obviously the geopolitical thing that was going on, but it really put a lot of eyeballs on the sport that weren't there before. And then obviously with the Olympics, it's a good thing, but it really makes the regular season kind of goofy, guys, if you know what I mean. It just doesn't feel like it's hard to contextualize exactly what you're looking at. I don't know if I'm alone in that, but I know one thing about this team. They fight like hell. That Friday night game, guys, was extremely fun with the Blues. That was really fun, wide open, kind of goofy, kind of nutty hockey. And these guys never quit. Saturday night, they just didn't have anything left. As you said, you could see that thing coming up from a mile away.
Right.
I could see it coming. I'm as goofy as you want to be. So, I just hope these guys don't get too ground down by this goofy schedule, because it is goofy what they're doing.
Yeah, and thanks, Tone. I appreciate the call.
I'll actually give you a little bit of a comparison here, right?
Go ahead.
So,
yeah.
So you've got this multi-week break for the Olympics in February. And on one hand, I look at it and I kind of agree with Tony. Like, it is a little bit Looney Tunes that they're doing that. And really, I'm sure that the Players Association and the league wouldn't have liked the idea of extending the season, well into June, like late June, and then having a later start to the regular season next year. But like, I could have maybe made the case that would have been the smart thing to do. They did it around the COVID season, right, where the season got off to a later start because of having to restart. The comparison I'll make is this, though. So while it stinks to take that break in February, you still then have about a week of February, and then you have the whole month of March and like half the month of April leading into the playoffs. There's another league right now that is just coming off a 3-week break in the middle of their playoffs. Major League Soccer is doing it right now. There was an international break. Players went away to go play for their teams. And now they're coming back to the Philadelphia Union this week.
Yeah.
First game in 22 days. They're playing in the Eastern Conference semifinals. They haven't taken the field in 3 weeks. Imagine that in the middle of the playoffs. Imagine how stupid that seems. You guys talk about Looney Tunes and about, things just being a joke. Like, that's a joke. At least here where this break happens, there is the ability, one, for guys who aren't going to be playing in the Olympics to get healthy, which is pretty critical. And two, it's going to give you the ability to still have enough games where you go into the postseason and the teams that stood out initially are probably still going to stand out, right? Like, you're going to get back in the flow of things. It might not be perfect. I imagine that first week or so is going to look kind of nasty coming out of that break, but there's still time to find your footing again.
Yeah. I mean, yes. There's time to find your footing again, and the break does help some guys. Obviously, you want to, your body's going to heal up a little bit. Look, this is not anything new. I mean, we can potentially have this conversation every 4 years, right? That there's the Olympics, but it goes back to how long they've been doing the Olympics now. They've also had 2 work stoppages that had shortened seasons. You had the COVID season. So the NHL's used to this. Like, you have crazy schedules in the NHL all the time. This show happens to be one of those years where you happen to have one.
I might actually have good news, though. So, like, coming out of the break, the Flyers' first 2 games after the Olympic break are on the road, which doesn't really matter because you haven't been with your team anyway, right? Like, you haven't been, like, going out on the road to start really doesn't matter after a time off like that. They're in Washington and then it's New York. So it's not even like it's a ton of travel. Right?
Yeah.
It's like a train ride or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then four of their first 6 games coming out of the break are going to be on the road. That also includes Toronto, not a very big trip, and then Pittsburgh, cross state, not a big trip. So, like, at least for the Flyers, they'll have that ability to kind of gain their footing. And even when they're quote unquote on the road, it's not that far. They're not flying across the country.
You're right.
And back and back
but,
and back.
But it still wears on you.
Yeah,
Believe me.
sure.
Up and down in an airplane, even if it's a 45-minute flight, still stinks, man.
Yeah.
Like it's rough. You know, you're still checking into a hotel. It's not your home. It's not your own bed. You're not getting in until 2:00 in the morning. You got to get up and have a practice first thing the next morning. Like, yeah, your sleep schedule's thrown off. Everything's thrown off. It's not ideal.
You know what's going to hurt them though? So there's a very short West Coast swing in mid-late March at Anaheim, at LA, at San Jose. That one's kind of rough. The one that I think actually stinks the most is like right at the start of April. They're at the Devils, which is whatever. 2 days later, they're at Detroit. And then 2 days after that, they're out in Winnipeg. And then they've got to fly cross country and come back.
Yeah.
That to me is a really tough stretch. And then never mind the fact that you've got the Hurricanes and the Canadiens at that point. So that is going to be kind of murderer's row. And that's why it's so important that now, while they're playing so much at home, they're able to kind of bank those points. That's going to be critical to them if they're going to have a chance of making a playoff case. A lot of their ability to really be a playoff team comes down to what they do over the next month or so.
Yeah.
With all these home games.
Yeah. I just saw Frank Seravalli walk in. He's getting his family a table. Will be joining us momentarily. That's a great opportunity to remind you to if you need a perfect place to watch the next Flyers game or any number of these road games that they're going to be having coming up after that homestand, the best place to do it is right here at Chickies and Pete's. Any one of their 17 locations is a great spot to go. Grab a basket of crab fries, one of the specialty pizzas. Russ and I get the crab cake sandwich. I like the barbecue burger. There's the Bundy special, which is like the 12 different
12 shrimp.
Yeah, he's got the 12 peel and eat shrimp. Yeah, but he also has has a bowl of soup.
He does the pizza, and he does a pizza too.
And he does a pizza as well.
That man gets his carbs in. He gets his protein in. He gets his dairy, I guess, through the chowder. Or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. So don't forget to stop by any of the 17 Chickies and Pete's locations. But if you're going to a game, stop by the flagship South Philly location before you make your way to the game. And you can always go to chickiesandpete's.com to check out for more upcoming events that they have besides Snow the Goalie Radio. They have other things going on at Chickies and Pete's, so make sure you check that out as well.
What soft light through yonder window breaks? It is the east, and Frank Seravalli is the sun. Welcome in.
How's it going, guys?
Good to have you, my friend.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
You're coming off of a practice tonight, huh?
Right off the ice and right here.
How's that going, man? Coaching.
It's great. I really enjoy it. I coach 2 different teams, and just a great way to give back. I had so many great experiences with lots of different coaches that I had growing up, and just a chance to spread that knowledge and enjoyment. I have a lot of fun doing it.
That's awesome. I mean, here's one of the questions I wanted to ask you about that. How many times did the kids ask you about, your travels through the NHL, the people you know, the people you talk to?
Hardly ever.
Really? What?
We actually don't. I can't tell you that we've talked about it much. I get an occasional question from a parent, but not like really not. We don't really talk about it that much.
Wow, that must be really enjoyable then.
It's actually very refreshing.
Because I can't tell you how many times you show up somewhere, right, and someone immediately wants to start asking you about hockey.
Yeah, 100%.
Right, it happens all the time. And so to actually be doing something and not have someone ask you about what you do for your job,
they're way more interested in asking me about their kids' ice time. So that's usually where the conversation goes.
It's just like an agent with a general manager.
Exactly.
It works the same way. Well, we wanted to have you on, Frank, because despite the fact that you're coaching kids and giving back, you're also still an NHL insider for the entire league. And you have a perspective that's a little bit different, I think, than what the people who are here in Philadelphia have with the Flyers. And for those of us who are with them on a daily basis, grinding through the season with them, you get to look at it from a little bit further away and also get the perspective of how they're viewed around the league and around the 2 different countries. So I wanted to kind of just throw it to you just generally. They're off to an okay start, but not a great start, not a bad one. They're right around 500.
9-6-3.
Yeah,
right
around
that's 900.
That's 500. 18 games, 9
It's NHL 500.
I consider that 500.
It's 500. Yeah. What is your thought, and what do you think that the rest of the league how they view them?
I would say it's probably been a pretty expected start. There haven't been too many surprises, right? This team works. They compete. The effort is there. I think the only thing that has surprised me a little bit has been the style of their play, which has been very play not to lose big. That's how I would term what the Flyers have been so far. It's very safe. It's very structured. And at times it's not very exciting to watch.
No,
Yeah.
Which has been maybe a little bit painful for Flyers fans, but I think they are what they are, if that makes any sense.
right.
The reason they play that way is because I think there's real limitations with this roster. And so they're trying to, it's kind of the way I think about how I do my job. Do whatever I can to not get hit, right?
Yep.
So like say what you need to say, play the way that you need to play, but make sure that you don't get clobbered. And that's really the MO for this team, I think, through the first quarter of the season.
Have you been surprised at all by how well Vladar has played in net? Or did you kind of see that with the way he played in Calgary, even though he was the backup for Dustin Wolf last year, the way he played in Calgary?
I'm not surprised at all because I've watched him really closely. First off, as you guys know, he's a big guy.
Yeah.
And second, one thing that I think gets twisted in the NHL is that at a certain point you get pigeonholed as only one thing or one guy, right? Oh, this guy's a backup. He's a continual 1B. The truth is Dan Vladar, by age and experience, is actually relatively young in NHL years. So to see him step into the NHL and then now as a 24-year-old backup progress to being a guy that was a 1A, 1B for a while in Calgary, and then now break free from that, what he was searching for was an opportunity. And the Flyers had one, right? Sam Ersson, I think, has done a fine job. But if you can give him the bulk of the starts, I think you're going to see some decent numbers. And the structure and the way that they play in front of him, the style, I think is well suited to a goalie like Dan Vladar. So I think it's a pretty good match. I think he's got some runway left. I'm not saying he's going to be this team's starter for years and years, but I think for what he was looking for and what the Flyers were looking for, he's sort of that perfect carryover to help bridge you to the next whatever you have, your next guy that you find or draft.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you about before we get, there's a lot of negative we can get to too, but I wanted to stick with the positive things.
That's a change for you.
Just to start.
Right?
Just to
Right?
start. Just to start.
He's a shill. Didn't you know that?
It's a shill.
The commenters like to call him a shill sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes. When you look at the guys that were brought in this year, they've all been pretty successful so far. We're 18 games into a season. There's a lot of time left. But Zegers has been really good. Dvorak has been really good. Even a guy on the third pair is like Noah Juleson has actually served a role.
He's a competent NHLer.
Yeah, like they've done a nice. Like if you compare what the people the Flyers either traded for or signed in free agency to what everybody else did, they're right there. As they did a nice job.
Yeah. The thing is, okay, so the positive is that they've done a nice job.
Yeah.
The other side of that coin would be they're just Band-Aids.
Well,
right?
sure.
They're guys that are for the here and now or stopgap solutions that you can plug a hole.
Well, they're
right?
hoping Zegers is more than that.
Well, Zegers, he's the exception, right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying the other guys, Dvorak, he filled that center position. Hopefully, Juleson gives you some third pair minutes, et cetera. Zegers is obviously in a different category, but the flash, the excitement, that part we knew you'd see, right? To get a guy that was rejuvenated. And I thought it was so interesting the way that he explained it, this sort of seasonal depression, so to speak, that existed. I don't know if he could put a better, nicer terminology to what was a really brutal situation for him. He was playing under a coach and an organization that didn't believe in him. He wasn't getting opportunity at the position that he wanted to play at. And he's a guy that was beaten down in a big way. So to think that he'd come here and find new life, I mean, that was going to happen anywhere. What the Flyers still have in front of them with Trevor Zegras is a guy that needs to find another dimension to his game, needs to find another level. And Rick Tocchet has his work cut out for him to be able to do that, because I still think that there's some parts of his game and his training, his way he thinks about the game, the intensity that he brings to it, they all need to find another gear. And so the good part is he has a lot of things that you can't buy or teach, that inherent skill and talent. It's about getting the next layer and lever to it that he's going to have to figure out.
Do you think that they should sign him?
I think they should wait.
You think they should wait?
Really?
Yeah, I think executing a contract right now too soon, I don't know who that benefits. I'm a big believer, especially when it comes to guys that have talent like that. You got to leave a little carrot dangling. You got to leave something to chase and keep him hungry, because I think at a certain point when you find too much comfortability, when you show up and you know that your job's not in question, your pay is not in question, you're set for life, I just think you got to challenge certain guys. And to me, that's one that stands out.
All right.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That's an interesting thing.
Tell me what the benefit would be to signing him now.
Well, so I look at it not as what the benefit is. I look at it as what is the actual value that's going to drop between now and it's time to negotiate at the end of the season. Like if the idea is wait for a dip in play to try to get him at a better AAV.
That's not the play. I don't think that's what they're looking for.
I think it is. I don't know. Maybe you've had a conversation.
I don't think they're trying to find a value.
So let me ask you this then, Frank.
They're not trying to buy on the dip. I don't think that's the
okay.
case.
Fine, but let me ask this then: What if Zegras goes off and he's a 90-point player, 95-point player this year? And that's probably more than you ever would have expected coming into the season. Does Pat Brisson now all of a sudden have a little bit more leverage to get more out of the Flyers than maybe the Flyers would have wanted to give him?
Well, I don't view I think that's the best problem to have.
Sure.
Like, let's say he goes off and he puts up monster numbers and you have to write a bigger check. Okay, fine.
Okay.
First off, the Flyers aren't cap strapped. They are willing to spend. They're willing to pay the guy. I think they just need – I'm not speaking for them. I think I need to see more. I think a lot of people need to see more before you're making a significant commitment in term. I'm not so tied up on the AAV because I don't think that matters. I don't think the Flyers – they can shift their money around any which way they want to better plan for the future, and especially with the rising cap and how much it's going to be increasing, that's not a concern. If you need to devote more to Trevor Zegras, that's a good problem to have. I don't think signing him now and signing him to a term deal 6, 7, 8 years at an AAV that you feel is really reasonable for you, I don't know how much that makes sense for them in the long term. Because what happens if year 3, year 4, you come to really hate it? As much as you're like, man, I got the value and it feels so good to get him on a good deal. If he's not delivering and if he's not the player you want him to be, you're going to hate yourself.
See, I guess my thought is if you were trying to make a case for why you wouldn't sign him now, it would be based on the fact that he's had injury issues. And you want to see that there's a durability there. Maybe you hold off until the midpoint of the season. And if he's still healthy, hasn't really missed much time in the first half of the season, if that was the big hang up, that would make sense to me. I know that you're not supposed to, sunken costs shouldn't factor into future expenditures. But like my simple comparison is, this team decided to sign Owen Tippett to a very long deal at a number that I can't really comprehend.
It's not that bad.
Zegras, well, but for what I think he is, Zegras is easily worth.
So define him for me. That's what I want you to do. Tell me what Trevor Zegras is.
If Trevor Zegras at worst is a top 6 wing at an $8 million cap hit with a rising cap, that to me isn't something that should be much of a holdup. If the fear is that,
is he a center or is he a winger? That's the first and most important distinction.
It seems like they think he's a winger.
I think he's a winger. I think the Flyers think he's a winger. The problem is I think he thinks he's a center.
He does, but the Flyers think he's a winger.
But even as a winger at $8 million on a cap hit, like that to me isn't some absurd number.
Okay, so what is the projected production on $8 million for Trevor Zegras on a consistent basis? Like, what if you're giving him 8? What are you penciling him in?
Point per game, right?
Probably expect about what you expect from Travis Konechny, who you gave 8.25 to. So probably somewhere in that mid 70s, low 80s number.
Okay, so let's begin to work backwards here and figure out the cap and what it looks like. So you mentioned Tippett. Now you've got Konechny. Then you throw in Zegras. Who else are you paying up front? Who else are you committing to?
Well, they already have the big commitment to Couturier long term.
Okay, that's 4.
Yeah.
And
Sanheim.
Okay, that's on your back end.
Oh, you're talking about up front.
Forwards.
Oh, forwards only.
You would think
Mishkov eventually.
Okay, that's 5.
Yeah.
So that's potentially 5 relatively high-priced forwards, right? Relatively.
Yeah.
You're not talking double-digit AAVs, but still pretty significant cap hits, right?
Yeah.
Percentage-wise. Mm-hmm. Where are your centers?
Probably at 35.
Still no centers.
Still no center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so then you've just committed more cap to a winger.
Yeah.
Do you begin to see that how you've got 5 wingers to play in your top 6 and no centers, and they're all somewhere between 5, let's call it 5 to 8% of your cap, even as the cap.
We didn't even mention Forster, who they're going to have to give a contract to as well.
There's a lot of wings. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Martone
Yeah.
eventually.
Yeah, eventually Porter. Who's
Problematic, isn't it?
who's been great.
It
by-
is.
Who's been great, by the way, at
Right.
Michigan State.
He's
Tenth
been
first team.
fantastic.
He's
The
been
problem
fantastic.
is, as you know, and as many people watching and listening know, there are two places to get elite centers: the draft, free agency. Because not a lot.
free agency.
Well, I know, because not a lot of teams like to trade their number one center either. So it's typically free agency or it's the draft. Well, the 2026 free agent class that at one point looked really good, and the Flyers enjoyed touting how much cap
I'm going to
space
take a nap
they
on
had
free
coming.
agent day now.
There's
There's
nobody
nothing
left.
left.
there's nothing. It's horrific.
Panarin, right? It's the only one.
So- and he's a
so
winger.
that's
Yeah.
that's gone.
It's a winger.
That's gone. And the only other option is the draft. But this team and Rick Tochet's style does not appear to be a team that's going to race to the bottom. Now, there's a lot of parity in the league. They still might find themselves in the lottery potentially, depending on how things play out. But they're not in a race to the bottom for Gavin McKenna. So where do they find that center?
I think you just hit on the fundamental flaw of where they're at right now, which is a team that's not capable of getting to the bottom, that has not necessarily orchestrated this order correctly, in my opinion and view, which should be your only job this year, instead of trying to be competitive, should be to gain one of those 5 to 6 franchise-changing players that exist in the 2026 NHL draft. Period, full stop, end of story. Anything more than that is a fail. That's how I view it. It's black and white, but to me, it's really simple, because if you're not, it's not even just make the playoffs. If you're not in the inner circle of cup contenders, what are you doing? What's the point? For what? Let's go little Ricky Waters. For who? For what? I mean, that's how I look at it. It's in this one particular year, they got a little ahead of their skis in terms of trying to inch this forward in a year where you didn't need to. It's an unforced error.
So you think that those patchwork players that they brought in, those Band-Aid players, they would have been better off just having those guys get filled in with some of the younger guys that were within the organization to...
No, I think you could have unpacked it in a different way. It's not those guys. They're not helping you, hurting you. They're neutral. They're irrelevant. I mean, no offense to them. I'm not carving them. I'm saying the way you think about building your team, you should have maybe pried off a piece or two already. Maybe you should have traded a Konechny when you could have and gotten value. Maybe you should have pick another guy, Tippett or Sanheim or whoever. Whoever it might be.
Could they still do that, though?
They could, but I don't think that's how they think about it.
Well, maybe not.
I know that. I'm telling you, based on conversations I've had, I don't think their thought process was, we better not be picking in the top 5.
Yeah.
And it's a fundamental philosophical conversation. It's existential to me. That's how I view it.
Another thing I wanted to ask you about.
All of those things, by the way, are things that we talked about on the show.
Oh, for sure.
The trading Konechny thing before giving him that deal was a thing that we ended up yelling at each other about.
These are nice players.
Times. They're good players, but they're not critical to a Stanley Cup contender.
Well, they will be critical support players to a Stanley Cup contender, but they're not driving you to a Stanley Cup.
Correct.
And so those are the things that, and I don't want to come off as negative for negative sake or too negative, but I think about it in positional boxes. Who's your franchise goalie? Who's your franchise defenseman? And who's your franchise center? And as I see it from a 30,000-foot view, I don't know that the Flyers have answered any one of those single questions.
They might have a goalie in the system. They might have a goalie in the system. That you're right. They don't have the number one center, and they don't have the number one defenseman even in the system. Like, you look what they have.
They've got a great collection of wingers.
Like, great collection of support players coming.
All the wingers
even
together.
the prospects. Like, they have a nice collection of prospect support players.
Yeah, for 100%.
Yeah, but they don't have that guy who could be the number one at center or at defense. They might have a goalie. We'll see.
And the goalie is maybe the easiest part to find.
Correct.
Because the way I think about goalies is there's 64 of them, and there's way more goalies available in the ether than there are jobs available, and you should just be throwing a million guys at those positions to see which one sticks.
Correct.
And don't devote cap space to it because you don't need to.
Yeah.
So whether it's drafting or acquiring, I don't know that the method really matters, but it's the fundamental. If you're building a house, the foundation has to be in place or the whole thing crumbles. And I just don't know that they've nailed the foundational build of the steel to get the end result right, which is then chasing the ultimate prize. And that's the depressing part if you're a Flyers fan.
there's one more big thing I want to get to with you, but I got to remind everyone, don't forget the on-site host for each and every week for Snow the Goalie is Chickies and Pete's. We're here at Chickies and Pete's on Roosevelt Boulevard in the Great Northeast. No matter the sports season, Chickies and Pete's has you covered. Start your meal off right with some of their delicious red garlic or spicy white wine menu mussels. Before you indulge, one of the mouth-watering burgers, the ultimate tailgate, Fightin's Burger. I get the barbecue burger every once in a while. So come on out today to one of more than 17 locations. Be sure to check them out the next time you're at a Flyers game. They have 2 locations there, either in the East Food Hall or at the Southeast entrance in front of Section 103. Frank.
Am I too hard? Am I too negative?
No, we got more because there's more. There's this one's going to be the one that really gets everybody going because
This is the one?
Oh, trust me. Because last week there was the big hullabaloo.
Oh.
All right, about Couturier and Mishkov. And Couturier why is he criticizing Mishkov, which he wasn't. And I don't want to relitigate that, but he absolutely was not.
I never viewed it that way.
Right. But there needed to be context, understanding what was going on in that conversation earlier in the room with Mishkov, and then the question that was asked of Couturier. So he was not criticizing him. But Mishkov is not getting a lot of minutes. He came into camp out of shape. There's been some questions about how the Flyers are handling him. What is your perspective on Matvei Mishkov's sophomore season and where it's at? And can he catch up? Because it's not an easy thing to do when you show up in camp not in shape and to really catch up to your team during a season.
Well, it's interesting that you use the phrase catch up, because that's the one thing that has always stood out to me watching his game is that he's just not quick enough. And I know you were talking about the figurative sense of catching up to being in shape and the grind of the season and all those things. There is zero question that this has been an exceptionally disappointing sophomore campaign for him. And it's not production-wise. It's commitment. It's the non-negotiables of you are a professional athlete. And then this kind of somewhat notion that existed that he might have had an ankle injury that the Flyers didn't know about. That was a really nice cover attempt by whoever orchestrated that. Because how else do you explain a guy who isn't quick, that hasn't put in the work to really get to the next level? And look, sometimes he's still kind of a kid. He still is kind of being handed money for the first time in his life that's life-changing. And you can understand how things go wayward, right? That's just life. Like, not everything, development is not linear.
Right.
It's just not, that's not how life works. And so he has runway. I believe in his talent. I like when he plays the intensity that he does bring to winning battles and all those other things. But let's just rewind back 2 minutes to our last conversation, which is a team of wingers. And that cannot be, in very rare exceptions, are play-driving wingers the engine to Stanley Cup contenders. I mean, we're talking like David Pasternak and it's a small group, right? Guys that are true engines from the wing. And they need more support. The plan can't be, well, we have Matvei Michkov, so therefore we're going to go X. Yeah. That's not the path. So in a way, it's kind of sobering, not just for the organization, but for the fan base in general, that everyone's so excited about what he brings. And it's undeniable the talent he has. Channeling that and then finding the proper support is the challenge.
He was, for the first time, he was refreshingly honest with us at the last, when we spoke, and he said that he didn't do anything for 4 months. But he really meant he wasn't skating like he used to when he used to go back home to Russia and play in summer tournaments and things like that. That's what he meant by that. But I think that what the Flyers fans have to hope is that, okay, it's a disappointing season, but that it sinks in for him, right? That's what they got to hope for.
This is what the standard is, and this is what's required, and you've got to find a way to meet that. And if you can't, you're going to find yourself in a really difficult spot in a league that is not very forgiving. Yeah.
Well, Frank, our time is up. The show is about to wrap. Thank you for stopping by. It's always
awesome to see you guys.
A pleasure
to
see you.
Stick taps
for Frank Seravalli.
Above the table.
Check him out on Twitter at Frank_Seravalli for all the latest NHL news. And that'll do it for us, Russ. Here,
It will.
Snow the Goalie. We'll be back for Press Row Show tomorrow night from the building, Flyers and Blues. And then next week, we're on at Chickies and Pete's.